The footage played out in the grand hall, the flickering images of Earth's bloodied past on full display. Violent battles, cities reduced to rubble, soldiers clashing in endless carnage. The alien audience sat in uneasy silence, eyes wide, many recoiling in shock at the sheer brutality of the war-torn Earth. The human veterans who stood among them remained stone-faced, almost eerily so, as if the images had no effect on them. At the far end of the room sat one veteran in particular, Sergeant Marcus Hale. His posture was straight, his hands resting quietly on his knees, the weight of decades worn heavy in his tired eyes. As the footage reached its peak, the screams, the explosions, the faces of dying comrades, Marcus did not flinch. The chaos on the screen mirrored nothing of the calm in his demeanor. A few aliens murmured among themselves, casting curious glances at him. There were rumors that the human veterans had seen things that no one should ever have to experience, but this was beyond anything they could comprehend. A sharp voice cut through the murmurs. "What is your perspective, human?" The room grew silent. All eyes turned to Marcus, but he didn't respond. He simply stood, his movements deliberate and slow, and left the room without a word. No one had expected that. No one had expected him to do anything at all. Yet, in his silence, he had said more than any speech could. The room buzzed with confusion, some delegates wondering what they had just witnessed. Others felt a strange unease, as if there was something deeply unsettling about the quiet figure who had just walked away. The true nature of Earth's violence, its cost, its weight, had never been so apparent. And yet Marcus had said nothing, offering no defense or explanation. It was as though he had stripped the violence of its context, leaving only the stark truth: humanity had been through hell and emerged silent, not out of shame, but out of a quiet, undeniable strength. The following day, Marcus was approached by a young alien journalist, Alia. She was tall, her eyes sharp, eager for answers. She'd been present when the footage played, and something in her instincts told her there was more to the silent human than met the eye. She found him alone in a small chamber, staring out a window toward the distant stars. She hesitated before speaking. "Why did you leave?" she asked, her voice tentative. Marcus turned to face her, his gaze unreadable. "What do you want from me, alien?" Alia flinched at his bluntness but pressed on. "The footage, it shows nothing but death. No explanation, no remorse. You're part of that. How does it feel?" Marcus's expression softened, but only slightly. "How does it feel to you? To watch your people's past laid bare in front of strangers?" Alia didn't have an answer for that, but something about his words hit her deeply. "You didn't flinch when it played," she said, her curiosity growing. "Don't you feel anything? How could you just watch it?" He paused, staring at the ground for a moment. "I've seen things that don't let you forget. The dead, they don't ask for apologies." Alia studied his face, the weariness in his eyes telling her there was more. She'd heard stories of Earth's wars, of the endless cycles of violence that had ravaged the planet. But hearing it from him, seeing the emotion that flickered behind his calm facade, was different. There was something human about it, something raw and unfiltered. "Tell me what it was like," she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What did you lose?" He looked at her, his gaze intense. "Everything. I lost everything. And yet I'm still here. We're still here." She nodded, slowly absorbing his words. The more she learned, the more she understood why the elders feared humanity. It wasn't just the violence, it was the resilience. The human ability to survive, to endure, to rise from the ashes of destruction and fight again. And that, she realized, was exactly what the elders feared. Alia's thoughts were consumed by Marcus's words. She couldn't shake the image of him standing there, silent and unyielding, while the footage played. She began to see the bigger picture, the fear that the elders had instilled in their people. The law was clear: no alien may interact with humans. The elders' decrees were absolute. The truth was, they were afraid of what humans could inspire. They were afraid that the human spirit, strong, untamable, defiant, would spark something in the galaxy they couldn't control. The next time she saw Marcus, he was preparing to leave the summit. The elders had begun to grow suspicious of him, and his time in the Galactic Center was drawing to a close. He was preparing for his departure, but Alia couldn't let him go without one last conversation. "What will you do now?" she asked. Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze. "I'll leave, just like they want. But that doesn't mean I'm done." Alia frowned. "Done with what?" "Done with them," he replied softly. "Done with their fear, their control. You think you've been trained to fight? To survive? You haven't seen anything yet. The real fight starts when you stop running." Alia felt a shiver run down her spine. For the first time, she understood the gravity of what he was saying. It wasn't just about war. It was about something bigger. Something dangerous. The next day, the elders called for an audience with Marcus. The tension in the room was palpable. They had discovered his connection with Alia and worse, his refusal to be a part of their planned dismissal of humanity. The elders saw this as an act of rebellion. A violation of their most sacred law. "Human," the eldest spoke, his voice thick with authority. "You have broken the laws of our society. You have shown us that you do not understand your place here. You will leave immediately, and you will never return." Marcus stood, his face set in stone. "You're scared. You're scared of what humanity could do to your world. To your people. We fear nothing," the elder snapped. "Your kind will never be welcome again." Marcus didn't flinch. "We will be," he said simply, his voice low but sure. "And when that time comes, you won't be able to stop us." Alia stood beside him, her hands clenched into fists. She had already made up her mind. The elders could exile her, could punish her, but they could not silence the truth. She would stand with Marcus, no matter what. And as the room filled with the murmurs of outrage from the elders, Alia's heart beat faster. They were right. This was just the beginning. The fight for their freedom, for the chance to be heard, had only just begun. And humanity was not about to back down. The tension in the room thickened as the footage continued, and Marcus could feel the weight of every alien eye that turned toward him. The images on the screen were designed to provoke a reaction, humanity's most brutal moments, a compilation of wars fought, lives lost, and the sheer carnage that had marked Earth's past. Yet Marcus sat still, a silent monument to everything those images represented. He was no stranger to that violence. In fact, he had lived through much worse. The battle footage reached its peak, showing a close-up of soldiers struggling to survive amidst the wreckage, their faces marked by dirt, blood, and the unspoken pain of war. The footage didn't just show destruction, it showed the price humanity had paid for its place in the stars. The silence in the room was palpable as the last image of a battlefield flickered across the screen, the charred bodies of soldiers strewn across the ground, their lives snuffed out in an instant. But Marcus felt nothing. Not out of apathy, but because he knew that price all too well. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging glances. Some of them recoiled at the raw footage, others merely watched with clinical detachment, but none could deny the power of the images. Humanity's past was a savage one, and it seemed as though there was no reconciliation, no redemption in sight. Until, unexpectedly, the human veteran stood. Without a word, Marcus got up and began walking toward the exit, his back straight and his pace deliberate. No dramatic speech. No outburst. Just the quiet, purposeful steps of a man who had seen everything and now, somehow, was the one who needed to leave the room. His silence was as loud as any speech could have been. The aliens stared, confused and unsure how to interpret his exit. Some felt a strange sense of respect, others disbelief. But Marcus's walk spoke volumes. He had nothing to prove. He was not here to explain his actions. He was here to show them that humanity didn't need to justify its existence. The truth of their survival was self-evident in his presence, and in the countless others who had walked a similar path of loss and survival. He was humanity's legacy, silent, defiant, and unyielding. Alia had watched Marcus leave the hall with a growing sense of unease. There was something about his quiet defiance that struck her deeper than any words could. She knew the stories. Every alien race had their version of humanity's violent history, but seeing it firsthand, watching the footage, and then seeing how he carried himself in the aftermath, it was a jarring experience. Later, she found Marcus alone in the quiet corridor, his back to the wall, staring at the stars. It was a rare moment when the silence of the universe matched his own. She approached him slowly, unsure of what to say. "I don't understand," she finally admitted, her voice almost too soft to hear. "Why did you leave?" Marcus turned to face her. His eyes were dark, but there was a hint of something beneath the surface, something unspoken. "You think that footage is the whole story?" Alia hesitated. It's what humanity has become, isn't it?" His face softened, just slightly. "What you saw on that screen is just the end of a story. But it's not the whole story." Alia frowned, trying to piece together the fragments of what Marcus was saying. "Then what's the rest?" "The rest," he said, his voice low, "is about surviving. It's about standing up even when the world's fallen apart around you. You want to know what humanity's really about? It's about getting back up every time we're knocked down. It's about protecting the ones we love, no matter the cost." She could feel the weight of his words settling into her chest. There was a deep pain there, an undercurrent of something more than just survival. This wasn't about fighting, it was about the cost of living after the fight. Alia felt something shift in her, a realization that her perception of humanity had been shallow, built on the twisted stories of violence and war. Marcus had just shattered that perception with a single sentence. Humanity wasn't about war, it was about resilience. Alia swallowed hard, the implications of his words sinking in. She had always been taught to view humans as a violent race, driven by conflict, incapable of true peace. But Marcus's eyes, there was something there, something that said humanity had learned, grown, and understood more than they had ever been given credit for. "You've seen it, haven't you?" Marcus's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The way they look at us. They're afraid of what we might become. Afraid of what we might inspire." Alia's heart raced as she processed his words. The elders. She had heard whispers about their fear of humanity's spirit, its capacity to challenge, to defy. She had always assumed it was just about the violence, but now she understood. The fear wasn't just of what humanity had done, it was of what humanity could do. They could inspire revolution, defiance, and change. The realization hit her like a wave. The elders didn't just fear humans, they feared what humans could awaken in others. And that fear had led to the strict laws, the isolation, the prohibition against any interaction with Earth. Alia stepped closer to Marcus, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happens now?" He met her gaze with a quiet resolve. Now we see if you're ready to stand with us. Because if you are, we'll have to fight. And the elders won't let us walk away from this without a cost." The next day, Alia couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to unfold. The tension in the air was palpable. The elders had been discussing Marcus's presence at the summit in private, and Alia had already heard the rumors. They were preparing to take action. The question was whether Marcus would comply with their demands, or whether he would stand his ground. She found him once again, this time in a secluded area of the summit. He was preparing to leave, his bag slung over one shoulder. Alia could see the determination in his eyes. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to cower. He was going to face whatever came next head on. "Marcus," she called out, her voice steady. "They're going to try to exile you." "I know," he replied simply, not even flinching at the mention of exile. His eyes were calm, almost detached. Alia felt her pulse quicken. "What will you do?" "Stand my ground," he said, his voice unwavering. "It's not about me anymore. It's about showing them that they can't control us. They can't control you." Alia's heart beat louder in her chest as she realized the full scope of what he was saying. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for something bigger, something far beyond the immediate consequences. He was challenging the elders, not just on Earth's behalf, but on behalf of every race they had tried to suppress, to control, to manipulate. "They'll never let us go," she said, voice thick with uncertainty. Marcus gave her a small, knowing smile. "That's why we fight. We don't let them decide how this ends. We decide." And with that, Alia knew. This wasn't just a matter of saving one human. It was a matter of resisting everything the elders stood for. Everything they had built their civilization on. And she, like Marcus, was ready to stand and fight. She nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then on with you." The following morning, the elders summoned Marcus and Alia for a final meeting. They had grown tired of waiting. They were done with the defiance. It was time to end it. The following morning, the elders summoned Marcus and Alia for a final meeting. They had grown tired of waiting. They were done with the defiance. It was time to end it. "Human," the elder in charge spoke with a cold finality. "You have overstayed your welcome. You will be exiled immediately. And your accomplice," he turned to Alia, "will share your fate." Marcus looked them dead in the eye, his voice cutting through the tension. "You think exile will break me? You think it'll silence me?" He stepped forward, unafraid. "It's not me you need to worry about." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled in. Alia's eyes flicked between Marcus and the elders. This was it. The point of no return. "You're afraid of us," Marcus continued, his voice low but sure. "You're afraid of what we could do if we all stood together." The elders' eyes darkened. "You're nothing but a rabble, a small part of a dying race. You'll never have the power to challenge us." "We already do," Marcus said with quiet finality. "And you'll never stop us." The room was charged with tension as Marcus stood, facing the elders who towered over him with their usual air of authority. Alia stood beside him, her hands clenched at her sides. The elders had spoken of exile, of banishing him and silencing his defiance, but Marcus didn't flinch. He had heard it all before. Exile wasn't a punishment for him, it was an opportunity. "You are a stain on this summit, human," the elder in charge said, his voice thick with disdain. "You have broken the laws that have kept our civilization intact for millennia. Your presence here, your defiance, it cannot go unpunished." Marcus met the elder's gaze without a hint of fear. "You can try to break me, but it won't work. Not today. Not ever." Alia stood firm beside him, though her heart beat faster with every word. She could feel the weight of their decisions, the risk of standing against the elders. But this was no longer about just Marcus or even her. This was about everything they had taught themselves to fear. The elders had built a society based on control and silence, but humans weren't just survivors, they were rebels. And rebellion wasn't something they could suppress for long. The elder's voice hardened, a hint of venom creeping in. "You think your species can just walk into our world and rewrite the rules? You are nothing but a fleeting moment in the cosmos, a fading spark that will burn itself out." Marcus took a slow, deliberate step forward. "You fear what you can't control, what you can't predict. That's what makes us dangerous." Alia felt her pulse race. She had never seen Marcus so resolute, so unwavering. He wasn't here to beg for mercy. He was here to show them what humanity was truly capable of, standing up, no matter the odds, no matter the consequences. The elders could try to destroy them, but they had already lost the fight the moment they underestimated what humans were capable of. "We have always believed in control," the elder continued. "And we will ensure that your kind never disrupts the peace we've built." Marcus stood still, unyielding. "Peace?" he repeated. "Is that what you call it? You've built your peace on fear. On silence. You've kept everyone in line by making them believe they can't question you. But you're wrong. Humans don't bow down. We never have, and we never will." The elder scoffed, clearly unfazed. "You're nothing but an annoyance, a human pest. Do you think you can change millennia of tradition with your empty words?" Alia could feel her resolve strengthening with each passing second. She looked at Marcus, saw the fire in his eyes, and knew there was no turning back. She couldn't let this stand. She couldn't stand by and watch them crush everything Marcus had fought for. You want to know what we're really capable of? Alia's voice cut through the air, steady but fierce. It's not just about fighting wars or surviving battles. It's about defiance. About showing up when everyone tells you to stay down. You think you've controlled us. But you haven't. You just haven't been paying attention. The elder's gaze shifted to Alia, his eyes narrowing. You, too, have been corrupted by this human. He spat, his contempt now focused on her. You'll share his fate. Alia didn't flinch. You can't exile what you can't control, she said simply, the truth of her words hanging in the air. The room fell silent for a moment, and in that silence, something shifted. The elders had expected compliance. They had expected fear. But what they got instead was defiance, unrelenting and sharp, like a blade drawn across their fragile authority. We will not be exiled, Marcus said, his voice quiet but filled with a conviction that resonated in every corner of the room. We won't be silenced. You think we're just some fleeting race, here today and gone tomorrow? You think you can just send us away and be done with it? Alia could feel the shift, the stirrings of something larger than just their rebellion. The idea of humanity standing tall in defiance of the elders was more than just an act of rebellion. It was the spark of something greater, something that could ignite a fire across the galaxy. This is just the beginning, Marcus continued. We won't be shoved into corners and told to stay silent. We've fought too hard to be quiet now. You've built your empire on the bones of those you've kept down. But humanity won't kneel. Not anymore. For a moment, it looked as though the elder would strike, or at the very least, order the guards to remove them. But something in his eyes faltered, a brief flash of uncertainty. The elders had built their empire on fear, on the idea that no one would dare challenge them. And yet, here stood Marcus, here stood Alia, a human and an alien, united in defiance. We won't let you do this, Alia said, her voice ringing out, clear and determined. We won't let you take away what we fought for. The elder's face twisted in anger. You are nothing but a threat to our way of life. If you won't leave, then you will pay the price. Marcus stood tall, his eyes unblinking. Make your move. But know this, we'll never stop. You can exile us, but we'll never stop. Not until your peace is nothing but a lie, and the galaxy knows it. Alia's heart raced as she realized the true extent of their fight. This wasn't just about Marcus's survival, or her rebellion. This was about the entire universe learning what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The elders had underestimated them. They had misjudged their strength, their spirit. And now, they were about to pay the price. The elder glared at them, his face flushed with anger, but it was clear, their defiance had shaken him. This was no longer just a confrontation. It was a turning point. And as the tension in the room continued to rise, the thought that had been lingering at the back of Marcus's mind now rang true. This was the beginning of something bigger. The fight for freedom. The fight for change. The fight for a new order. It had only just begun. Marcus's words echoed in the chamber, and the elder's silence stretched for a heartbeat that seemed to last an eternity. The air was thick with tension, as if the very walls of their ancient city had begun to tremble under the weight of his defiance. The elder in charge stared at him, his face unreadable, but there was a flicker in his eyes. A fleeting doubt. It was subtle, but it was there. You speak of rebellion as if it's something you can control, the elder finally said, his voice cold and steady. You think your presence here can inspire anything but chaos. Your species is not capable of bringing about change. You will crumble, as you always have. Marcus didn't flinch. The universe doesn't crumble because of the will to change, he replied. It crumbles because of the fear of change. And you're afraid. You're terrified of what humans can do when we rise. Alia stood beside him, her pulse quickening, but she didn't speak. There was no need for words. Marcus had already said everything that mattered. They were not here to beg for mercy or for permission. They were here to stand their ground, to show the elders that humanity was a force not to be dismissed. They had already learned that lesson the hard way, and now, it was the Elder's turn. The Elder's voice hardened. You misunderstand, human. We have controlled civilizations for millennia. Your kind is nothing but a fleeting moment in the grand timeline of the galaxy. You are here by our tolerance, not your own merit. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Tolerance isn't the same as respect. And we didn't come here to beg for your tolerance. We came to show you that you don't have the power you think you do. Alia could feel the atmosphere in the room shifting. The elders were accustomed to holding absolute power, to controlling every narrative, every outcome. But Marcus was dismantling their foundation, piece by piece. He wasn't just challenging their authority, he was exposing its fragility. You've built this empire on fear, Marcus continued, his voice calm but unyielding. You keep everyone in line with your laws, your threats, your promises of exile or worse. But you're wrong. That's not control. That's just a cage. And no matter how many bars you put in place, eventually someone will break free. The elder's face tightened, but Marcus could see it now. His resolve wavered. The fear that had kept the elders in power for so long was now being questioned. Alia could see it too. She had never imagined that a human veteran, one man alone, could make the entire room of powerful, ancient beings question their own authority. And yet here they were. This is not just about you, the elder said, his voice strained. This is about the balance of the universe. You disrupt that balance, and chaos will follow. Marcus smiled faintly. You've been hiding behind that idea for too long. The balance you speak of is nothing but a facade. A way to maintain control. And I'm telling you, it's falling apart. The elder's fists clenched, his rage now apparent, but he held it back. There was a wariness in his eyes, a hesitation. You speak like a leader, human. But you are nothing. You will never lead anything. Marcus's response was simple, but the conviction behind it was undeniable. Maybe not today. But you'll remember this moment. You'll remember the day humanity stood up and refused to be silenced. Alia could see the gears turning in the elder's mind, the calculation taking place. The elders had always believed that they were the ones who set the rules. They had believed that humanity, like so many other species, would bend under the weight of their laws. But Marcus had shown them something different. Something they hadn't accounted for, the power of defiance. The elder took a step forward, his tone sharp. Then prepare yourself. If you think your rebellion will go unpunished, you are gravely mistaken. You will not leave this place. You will never return to your home. Marcus's expression remained unchanged. I'm not here to return to Earth. I'm here to show you that your empire will fall. You've already lost the moment you tried to silence us. The elder's face twisted in fury, but there was something else there too, something that Marcus recognized as fear. They feared what he represented. They feared that humanity had the potential to change the very foundation of their power. And that fear was the beginning of their downfall. You have no idea what you're starting, the elder hissed. I know exactly what I'm starting, Marcus replied, his voice low and steady. I'm starting a rebellion that you'll never be able to stop. And you'll know it when the whole galaxy begins to stand up. Alia felt the weight of his words settle deep within her. The elder's power, the elder's control, it had always been a matter of perception. They had made others believe they were invincible. But now, with a single stand, Marcus had shattered that perception. And the ripple effects would be felt across the galaxy. As the tension in the room reached its peak, Alia took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Marcus. This was it. They were crossing a line, a point of no return. But in that moment she knew without a doubt that she was standing on the right side of history. You want to exile us? Marcus's voice rang out one last time. Go ahead. But you can't exile what you can't control. And that's something you'll never understand. We don't bow. We don't break. We fight. The elder's glare could have cut steel, but it didn't matter anymore. The decision had been made. The rebellion had already begun. As Marcus and Alia turned to leave, the eyes of the room followed them, but they did not fear the elder's wrath. They feared something far more dangerous, the unstoppable force of a people who had nothing left to lose but their chains. And as they walked out of the chamber, the quiet murmur of the galaxy's inevitable change echoed in the distance, a sound the elders could never silence.